name is Justin, and I am a child of God and an addict, and the host of the RECO12 speaker meeting. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I am living the relative happy, joyous, and free life that is promised to those living in recovery, and have been very active in the rooms of recovery since September of 2013. Welcome to the 121st meeting of RECO12. RECO12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds and the similarities of recovery from all addictions and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are trudging this road. We are an open meeting for all, no matter your life experiences, faith traditions, nationality, or background. To learn more about RECO12, please go to www.reco12.com. That's RECO12.com. RECO12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our 12th step in this manner. I'll put the information and links in the chat of the live meeting and in the show notes of the podcast if you wish to contribute to the cause. One more reminder that tomorrow is the deadline to get in on the book giveaway from the meeting from 2 weeks ago. To get in on the opportunity to receive the book Anti-Time Management by Richie Norton, just rate and review the podcast or share the podcast with someone in your recovery network, and then send me an email saying you did it. Send it to reco12pod@gmail.com with the subject line of book. If RECO12 is a meaningful tool for you in your recovery walk, please consider rating and reviewing in the podcast platform of your using. We look forward each week to receiving from the light reflected by our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. I'm excited to hear from this week's guest, Judy G., whose very interesting and intriguing topic is using is an option for a change. I was inspired to reach out to her after reading a book she wrote and was ecstatic that she responded with a willingness to share with us. Now, here's a little bit more about Judy, and then I'll turn the floor over to her. Judy started drinking and using drugs around age 13. 10 years later, she'd been kicked out of 3 schools, was homeless, had contracted hepatitis C from sharing dirty needles, and had lost the respect of everyone, including herself. Faced with the choice between an early grave and abstinence, she thought curing her disease would be a way out and got into recovery in 1986. Since then, her career has combined teaching students about the brain and studying the causes and consequences of drug addiction. Judy recently wrote a book for a lay audience synthesizing these endeavors entitled Never Enough, The Neuroscience and Experience of Addiction. Judy, take it away. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Justin. Yes, I'm Judy. I'm in recovery, and I'm happy to be here. I this is a topic that's very close to my heart. I think because of just the way I'm built. I have always been very strong-willed, and I think if I had gotten to recovery, to a kind of recovery, or introduced to a kind of recovery that was full of rules and admonitions and constraints, it would have not worked for me. I think one reason I've been able to stay sober since July 9th, 1986, is because there were really no rules. And it was, I'm probably still, I could say, built that way or a little immature that way. But I think one of my strongest drives was to do things my way. And that really turned out to kind of be lethal. But my mother jokes still that, it was like 3 when she said something like, well, sleep tight, Judy. And I said, no, I'm going to sleep loose. I just, if it's just, I like to rock the boat, and I'm not good at following directions. I like to learn for myself. So what happened was I was all about having my own personal will and my own personal freedom and my own personal, self-determination, so much so that, as Justin said, I nearly died. But that was kind of the minor detail. The heart of the matter was that I was absolutely miserable. I had kind of made a series of choices that were all about what I wanted at every moment. And And if we were either kind of I was going to manipulate you to help me get what I wanted, or I just wanted you to get out of my way. And so as a result of that, I was miserable and lonely and lost and despairing. So I ended up in treatment. And I always joke about this because it's really true, but this was in the 80s and I had no idea what treatment was, never heard of it. And I thought it was going to be like a spa. So I was not one of those who hit bottom, realized, oh dear, I have to change. I just thought I deserved a break and, let me get out of town for a bit. Anyway, it was not a spa. It was a terrible treatment center in the middle of nowhere in Minneapolis, or outside Minneapolis. And I heard there that if I wanted to live, I needed to stay sober. And I think other people can relate, but I was not so sure. I mean, that seemed like a very terrible set of options. Maybe I did not really want to live, but I was so always looking for my way that I thought, there's got to be kind of a back door here, and I'm going to solve my problem because I have a disease. Okay, that's what you say. I'll accept that momentarily, and I'm going to fix my disease. So then I can use, so there. So I had this plan, totally self-willed, that I was going to follow all the directions for 7 years, which is how long I thought it was going to take me to cure addiction, which is totally nuts, obviously. But anyway, that's what I thought. I was going to do it for 7 years. I was going to take directions. And the moment that I kind of got willing to do that, I will never forget. I was faced with a third step choice. And the whole time I'm in this treatment center, which was terrible, I was trying to game it, more or less. I was trying to scheme my way through, because what I wanted to do was take the parts that I liked and ignore the parts I didn't like, and basically get out the back door, which was kind of my MO. Don't be trapped. And I felt really trapped by the third step. So I came to see that things were not going well and that I was out of great ideas. And then this crazy choice was presented, which was to surrender or die, more or less. And oh my gosh, was I mad. I really felt like I had been tricked into the whole thing. And it was funny because I somehow, this was, I think, grace, I somehow saw that I could not do both, which was the way I tried to get through. I could do one or the other. And man, was I furious. So in the most belligerent way, I said, fine, let's see what you got. I'll for 7 years, I'll go ahead. And the whole thing is just, my thinking was so crazy, really. But so that's how I got to that. And of course, 7 years came and went. Things were a billion times better, at least. And I would say that I came to see my choices as like a series of forks in the road where, 100 times a day, and still 100 times a day, I have a choice between recovery or addiction, or life and death, or wholeness, or, alienation and brokenness. And I don't always choose the right way, honestly, but enough times I have used my pretty strong will to align with life and recovery. And so this is probably, it depends on the day, but this is probably the biggest gift of my recovery, more so than still being alive. I think it is the so precious to me that I realize kind of the privilege and the obligation as a sober woman to show up for my own choices. And I don't believe that, I wouldn't have gotten sober where basically my addictions determined all my choices. I didn't make, I think since I took that first big drink right around my 13th birthday, I'm not sure I ever made a single free choice until I happened to be in the bathtub when I was grappling with this third step, which is a place I often go when things get bad. And I was just feeling trapped. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try with like this much willingness and no faith, really, no hope even, but I just could see I couldn't do both, and things weren't going so well with my way. So, I think somewhere it says, relieve me of the bondage of self. And I have been relieved of the bondage of drugs and alcohol. And I've been relieved of the bondage of self, but I really push back against the bondage of anything. I think I did not get sober to be less free. And one way I learned that was I would be in groups of people, often women, and this was early on. And I would, my plan was to kind of get straight and right and orderly, even though it sounds like there's a piece of me that's really reckless. There's also a piece of me that wanted to fit in. And so I figured, if I stick with these people, I'll fit in, I'll solve the problem and all that. And I'll say that the more sober they were, the more kind of wild and eccentric they were, the more off the beaten path they were. And I was kind of scared by that initially because I thought, I don't want this big living. I kind of wanted to hide and be seen at the same time. I don't really know what that means, but some old version of perfection or something. So I'm explaining a lot of conflicts I guess I had. But I do think that I did not want a different kind of bondage. And when I hear sometimes, this is not an option. First of all, I'm still aware that if you tell me it's not an option, I go right for it. It's a thing about me. But I also appreciate when I hear that we're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. So I heard that was the promise, the new freedom. I'm all about freedom. And I always was. I tried to get there with tequila and other things, but I think that actual freedom is our birthright and very, very rare. I think in my life between 13 and 23, I was not so free at all. I mean, maybe not at all. But once I got introduced to recovery, I had options, and so I protect those options. Like I really treasure those options, and the new freedom, how that comes to me, is not easy. And it's not easy, but it's also, let me think about this for a second. I think to say it's not easy is really an understatement. There were times, many, where I actually realized maybe I don't want to be free. It's a burden because it requires showing up in a way that goes against my little part of my nature that wants to hide. and wants to escape and wants to not be found, which is still there, honestly. But, like again, you can't have it both ways. So I want to escape, but I want to be free. And I think the message is really that escape is not possible and freedom is so possible. Freedom is right here. And it requires me just showing up, which is kind of what I learned, the first 3 years of my recovery, how to show up, like just the tools for that, which is, no small task. So I can't be free without showing up. While showing up, though, I really can. I'm with my husband right now in Richmond, and we're going to concerts, live music that I really love to do. And so there's lots of drugs, maybe not so much at this one, but I'm almost exuberant about, and this wasn't the case in the beginning, but I'm so deeply grateful for being independent of my surroundings. Because there was a day where all somebody had to say was, hey, let's work and something. And that was the end of it. I didn't ever really choose that. And now I can be, proffered all kinds of things and in a kind of really free way, saying no thanks, and keep dancing. So I guess I have more time, but I think that's really the heart of it. And I guess what I could say is more about how I've come to there. So I initially said that I would have absolutely run the other way if there were rules. And sometimes I hear people, and this is maybe their path, and it's not like I think there's one, but for me, I never wanted a guide who would tell me, make your bed and do this and do that, because I just, I guess I appreciate the opportunity to find my own way. Like, I think that is the gift of life. And if nothing else, I get to choose my response. And so it doesn't so much work for me. Freedom to go inside with help. I'm certainly, I shouldn't make it sound like I do this by myself, because I'm all about backseat drivers. I think the more input, the better. My philosophy is take all the advice I can possibly get and then make my choice, So I love the take what I like and leave the rest. That seems perfect to me. But I like the part of take it first. And so I'm willing to try, but I think ultimately my source of connection to that freedom comes from facing the responsibility of the choices I have. And so, in the beginning, I was so happy to realize that if I was going to be put in a position that maybe was going to be tough, that I could choose not to be in that position. Like, I wasn't a victim of the tough situation just because, so I don't have to be there, first of all, or I can be there in a different way, or I can walk out the door, or I can get on my knees. I've done all those things many times. And I think that's kind of part of the way that freedom works, like it's not free. Freedom's not free. I think Malcolm X said that. It requires paying attention and being honest with myself. And I'm turns out not so great at being honest with myself by myself. I'm better at being honest with myself by talking to other people and then hearing myself. And then one of us can definitely call the bullshit. So through that kind of method of learning to show up and be honest, I can kind of grasp or visualize like all that I can choose as a result of being sober. I actually think that this is going to sound maybe off topic, but I don't notice a lot of freedom expressed in the world. I mean, maybe these enlightened, Dalai Lamas and stuff, but otherwise, I think when strongest model of really living a life from our internal source. In other words, somewhere it says, well, maybe it's I'm going to really butcher this, but I think I've become myself by giving up, by surrendering that first time and the zillion times since then. And so how is it that when I let go of control, but accept responsibility, I find myself, really? I think that is the key thing. And I don't think it would work if I was looking for another person, even a, book that sold 1 billion copies, to tell me what's right for me. There's this saying, which I always loved, even though I'm not Buddhist necessarily, but if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. And the minute I heard that, I understood that it's not on the road. It's in us, or it's not worth shit. Excuse me. I don't know if we swear in this, but it's, for me anyway, I feel like perhaps the biggest gift of my recovery is the opportunity to become by choosing my actions. And that is a new freedom. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hey leaders, I just wanted to jump in here real quick and acknowledge and appreciate you. My name is Mark Hildebrand. I'm the host of the Master Your Mindset with Coach Mark podcast. Now, before we jump back into this incredible episode, I want to thank you for your leadership. Getting uncomfortable, leading others by modeling the right behavior, and doing that all despite any outside criticism or judgment is not something most people do. And that is what makes you such a powerful leader, and I appreciate you. One of the things I enjoy is helping leaders like you, who don't have much free time in your life, develop even more confidence and skills to help lead yourself and others to success. If that's you, I want to invite you to jump into my podcast, Master Your Mindset with Coach Mark. We focus on shorter podcasts where we share the tactics and mindset leaders need to create more impact by doing less. If that's something that resonates with you, I'll see you there. Regardless, I wanted to thank you for being a powerful leader, for being the light, especially in times of darkness. I appreciate you, and you make the world better.
Thank you, Judy. Very good stuff. I really appreciate that. We did have a little bit of glitch here and there, but we got your message loud and clear, and it was beautiful. Reminder to our live audience to ask questions of Judy. Type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of your window. We have a question that came in from Jason, and I'd like to preface his question a little bit with going back to what you shared, where you had this moment of, am I going to do this? You're in the rehab center, you're in treatment, and you're in the bathtub, and you're like, this step 3 moment in my life. I'm sitting here in the tub and I'm angry about it. I mean, surrender or not, surrender or die, basically. And in that, in step 3, we talk about turning our will and our life over to a power greater than ourselves. And Jason asks, where does higher power fit in with all of this?
Well, that's been another privilege of recovery that's kind of deepened for me. But I think for me, I had plenty of ideas of what that was. And I think they're probably were all wrong, just because how could my little head, kind of apprehend what the higher power is? But I did really connect with the thing. It doesn't matter as long as it's not me. And that was like enough of a catch-22 to stop me. I really do think that it's so wide open. And so, I feel like in recovery, this is maybe our best commodity, that there is no way, And so, for instance, here's the thing I hear a lot around, or I have heard, I should say, but, basically, if they would do this, they would be better. And I think to myself, either we're powerless or we're not. And if we had the recipe, if we had any recipe, including in a blue book or a gold book, it contradicts powerlessness. There's not directions that I've found. I mean, they're in there somewhere, but at least to my reading, it's very much suggestions based on "to thine own self be true." And I can remember, but where do I find myself? So going back to Justin's question, yeah. What is my own self? Today, I think my own self is deep in the heart of God, like part of God. So, but at the time, all I knew was my own self was out of good options, and something else I had to sort of take my will and give it over. I think this connects really, though, to the third step, and or maybe it is the third step, but I think that it says that, which always seemed curious in the beginning, we don't get rid of our will. We take it and align it with a higher power. And that is not only true, but that is like such amazing, powerful kind of rocket fuel, because who gets to collaborate with God? I mean, I feel like probably we all have that opportunity, but that's like a heady, I don't think there's any way to overstate the import of that. And so God is not doing it to me. I'm not independent of God, but God is with me, and hopefully, and I would say not hopefully, with me, in me, and maybe through me, around me, on the top and the bottom. And this is why I can't escape either, by the way, because I think it doesn't matter. But I think what's different in recovery is that I'm awake to that. And that's what I was trying to get at, that when I first saw the third step, I was like, I am screwed. This is the worst thing I ever heard. Anything but this. And now I feel like it is riches beyond belief to have the chance, to participate in this way. Just little old me, with all my flaws, invited in this way to use my will. Yeah, I think that's mind-blowing.
I love that. Thank you for going into that and exploring that with us. I appreciate that. And I'm going to stick with that just a minute, because you said escape is not possible. And your line from earlier, escape is not possible, but freedom is possible, or at least the idea from the line you said earlier. When I think of the word escape, I think I've been confined, I've been trapped, I've been in bondage in some way or another. And getting out of that is freedom. But you're putting this dichotomy here. Escape's not possible, but freedom is possible, and the fruits of freedom are amazing. So dig a little bit more there, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I think probably Frankl is the one who I think said this in Man's Search for Meaning. And I'm not much of a historian, but I do know that he was in a concentration camp, Nazi concentration camp, and came down to the idea, which is, we could argue worse bondage than anything we've experienced, even though our bondage, I mean, mine and I'm sure many people's is terrible. And, for me, it was just black. But, he was really, in many ways, a victim more than I was. So, but to say that what we have left, and if somebody can correct me if I blow this, feel free. But if what we have left in the end is our response between, the way we're going to respond between our stimulus and our response, there's freedom. Now, when I was using, the stimulus was any opportunity to escape or get out of it or get wasted. And the response was instantaneous. It was like quicker than a knee jerk. But as a result of gaining tools, basically, there's a pause there. And that is great because I don't have to respond. That's really nice. So I haven't had to die. I do realize, there is that. But even more valuable to me, I think, is in that pause is all this freedom. I mean, kind of infinite freedom. If he could choose to live, and the way to live in those circumstances. I have a similar kind of capacity, which is that even when things seem not going well, I could, think of many. I have a friend right now who's dying of cirrhosis, and it's pretty terrible. I haven't seen it up close in all these years. I've known people who've died, but not as close as this person. And, what we're talking about a lot is, but what about today? What can be, and, it's almost like putting and this is for me too, putting a 2-year-old in charge of driving the, Mack truck. I mean, it's a little dangerous because I have all this. I can go, left or right, and I don't really know what I'm doing. But I think, at least for the third step, it means that I can, somebody has to turn the wheel, somebody has to step on the gas, and that is my gift, I guess, my responsibility. So I think, it says somewhere else, God will do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And I realized at some point, yeah, but God won't do anything for me I can do for myself. Damn, So in a way, it's the best possible scenario because everything I can't do for myself that's too big for me, which is a lot, I'm not worried about because it's not my thing. But the stuff that I got to do, yeah, that's why I'm sober. That's why I'm here. In this meeting, but also in my life, because there is stuff I can do and it matters.
Thank you, Judy. I really enjoy going in these adventures as you go through the answers to these questions. I like the depth and the breadth that you go into them. We have a question from Liana from our live audience. Liana asks, how does it feel? And I'll add in there, what does it look like to surrender in practice for you?
Oh gosh, I love that question. And I do want to say that one, I know I'm supposed to go on a little longer, but I think the questions are the best part, because who wants to listen to me drone on and I'll start repeating myself. So I have a great answer to that, because I think for me, this third step has been the fulcrum of my whole recovery. Like if I was going to a desert island and I could only bring one step, it would definitely be the third step, even though that's hard to choose. But at least for most of my recovery, it would have been a third step. Today, it might be the 11th step, but I would say, anyway. So what it looks like, this works for me, it might not be for you, but this is what my natural tendency is to manipulate, solve, fret, go get a PhD in neuroscience. Anything, I'll take my will and I will kind of latch on and swim the English Channel, because I'm going to do this. And what I realized in the bathtub and, since, is that not only doesn't help my life does not go better that way. It doesn't, for some reason. I'm such a scientist too, that this is true. For a while, I maybe was like 5 or 6 years sober, because the whole thing seems so fantastic, right? Why does my life get better if I'm not in charge of it? But I show up for it. So why is that? So I just thought, this is nuts. So I did this experiment. I went for a few months on odd days, because it seemed so odd to me. So I'm sure this is true. I would turn it over. And on even days, I just said, I'm going to, do the best I can. And I didn't drink. And I'm not kidding. The odd days went better. So anyway, what does that look like? So what it looks like for me is I picture myself in my natural stance, which is kind of like on top of the problem and turning things and thinking about this outcome or that outcome. I never was much for lists, but anyway, that kind of stuff. I do that. And then I realize, wow, there's a better way. I have an opportunity to practice my third step on this. And what I picture myself is I take the problem or the issue, which I'm looking at intently, and I turn my back and I look the exact other way. Now, when I look the other way, there's nothing there. Like I don't see, rainbows or anything. But I turn my back to my problem. Honestly, I do. And it works for me to kind of realize that 180 degrees from this stuff is the solution. And what it feels like when I get there is freedom. And it also feels hopeful. And it also feels like kind of this sense of expectancy, not totally unlike the sense of expectancy I used to get with drugs, by the way, because I would think, you never know what's going to happen. But kind of like that, where, how's this going to go? But, I'm testing the hypothesis that if I get out of the way, my life goes better and I become more alive. Because I don't want to rely on my own, very limited, very often dysfunctional strategies. I mean, they're not any better 35 years sober than, well, maybe they are a little better, but what's mostly changed is that I don't spend a lot of time doing that. I don't have 5-year plans and 10-year plans. What I have is a million forks in the road. And in that moment, I have what I kind of know deep in myself is the sober choice. And then, sometimes it's attractive the other way. It's, all day long. And I just, now it's a kind of almost like the feeling of you might get on your birthday, where you have all these presents on the table, but every day is filled with those presents. I don't know, but I think I've got to say, and it sounds so, so it feels like I turn around, which gets me out of the way. And then I just kind of wait for the unfolding. And it's been amazing. It is so amazing. Like, I wanted to be free when I was 13 and picked up drugs, and I thought, this is awesome. There's no telling. I mean, this is so much more rich and infinite and delightful. Yeah, it's crazy.
I love that. And I loved your experiment there. Hey, on odd days, I'll try this odd thing of giving it to higher power. And on even days, I'm going to sludge through it myself and just make this happen while staying sober and make a comparison to how that is. I think I'm going to adapt some of that into working with some of my sponsees, I think, who are really having a hard time with that concept, because what a beautiful way to look back at that and see how that goes. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things you just mentioned right at the beginning of that last question was, the third step would be the one you'd take to a deserted island. Well, maybe the 11th step. So let's go there. What does your 11th step practice look like today?
Well, I'll just say, in the interest of full disclosure, it took me about 24 years to be willing to do an 11th step. So I made it all sound so good, didn't I? But I would do God's will, or try to. I didn't know what God was. I didn't know what God's will was, but I would try at least to turn my back to Judy's will and be open to something else. But meanwhile, I would be, digging in the garden or working in the lab. I mean, I was doing stuff. I'm a doer. I am not a sit there and wait. And also, I think for me, something about the practice of the 11th step, which was big into waiting, seemed so just too much for me. I don't know. I feel ridiculous, but I should say in the beginning I did practice it, but I had the stack of books like this high and I would work through them. I sat in my papasan chair and thought what I was going to have for dinner, like that. But when it became clear, maybe around year 11 or 12, that, I might need to get still and see to thine own self in a different way than, just performance. I said, no way, not doing that. And then God did for me what I could not do for myself. And that is an amazing story where I'll just get the gist of it. This is kind of like this is an illustration of what we were just saying. But I began to be like a teeny bit willing and ended up getting plopped down into Tuscany for a year where I don't speak Italian. And right across the street from a Etruscan fountain with a view of the Mediterranean. I mean, it was kind of like the place to practice. And it took me there was a little chapel outside that no one went into except this old lady, Franca, who would clean it, and she couldn't see. So the thing was like dust this thick. It was it was 1,200-year-old thing. Nobody went in but Franca and me. Anyway, I would go and sit there every day because someone was suggesting I do that. And so probably 9 months, just nothing but chatter, realizing maybe get still. Okay, so finally I had like a millisecond of still. And I've built from that. But God, I'd say, took me there. I didn't, spend all my time eating cheese and drinking olive oil, but I did go sit, which was just terrible. I hated it. But as a result of that, changed my life, really changed my life. So now I would say that the purpose of my recovery was not to save my life. was not to get me to even show up for my life or necessarily for other people, but it mostly, like at the deepest level so far today, it could change tomorrow, is to know myself in God, as God knows me, has known me and will know me, and that I can't really even glimpse sometimes, but I do get just a taste of that. And yeah, I mean, the fact that I got to that through, the train wreck of addiction in my 20s, and then, these crazy vague steps with no real directions, it's just an amazing thing. So yeah, no, I would not give that up for anything now.
Thank you so much. And I love that experience that you were dropped into this beautiful place in a chapel that nobody ever went into, that you got to spend some time and just learn to find some quiet. Because yeah, I need that in my life too. I got a very loud brain that just keeps going. But thank you for sharing that. Now, you've been in the rooms in recovery for a little over 35 years. What is something that you have learned recently in recovery that was new to you that is helping you today?
Wow. Well, one thing that I've been rolling around that I learned recently is that the sort of meta purpose of the steps, and this is in my own words, what I've gleaned, but the meta purpose of the steps, and other people said this to me, but not maybe in this exact way, is to keep me open. And I think it goes back to the topic that we're discussing. I'm sure that I'm just constantly having to grow and to change and to see better and to know better myself, my relationship to other people, my relationship to the world, my relationship to God. And there's no end to that. And I think that the what the steps do better than anything except for suffering, maybe, or maybe great love, is show me how to be open. Because I constantly have to revise. I mean, there's this thing about we let go of our old ideas, and I realized every one of my ideas is old. They're all old. The second I have them, stop it. Because what do I know? I really don't. I guess I just can know inside, but not, my ideas are sometimes still half baked. So I think, that is so key, and so going back to in a way, I learned the same things I learned at the first 2 weeks, the first 2 years, honest, open, willing. Like if I don't show up and tell the truth, forget it. There's no hope. If I don't show up and tell the truth, there is no hope. That is really true. I mean, in a way, that's all I need to know. But as a result of that, then I'm willing, and this is how it worked for me. I did see, by telling the truth, wow, not going good. So then I was willing in the bathtub to make my first free choice in at least 13 years, maybe longer. And the open thing is, the thing about openness is if it's really open, it doesn't end. If it's really open, there's no boundary. And I do think that's true with anything that's true. And I do think that the principles of recovery are based in kind of an ever unfolding, participatory collaborative, what's new today kind of thing in this moment. So I guess I really appreciate that. And I'll just say, it did draw me in the beginning. And I don't even know if I certainly didn't know it in this way, but I think it's not a dead end recovery. And, many times that seemed like bad news. Like, you mean, what? I've got 15 years and I'm still doing this, or I've got 35 years and I still feel this way. So, but on the other hand, that's great news. How not boring is that,
Love it. Thank you. Before we go into closing up here, Judy, do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us?
Oh my gosh, I don't have any words of wisdom. Let's see. Well, I don't know who's here. It would be nice to get to know you, but I assume mostly are there people who are new or mostly
a mix. We've got newcomers, we've got old timers, we got all sorts of people that come into these rooms.
Yeah, so I'd love to let me turn this off. I got this my computer almost just shut down. Whoops. Easily distracted. Yeah. So I think the old timers know this already, and I certainly didn't know this when I was new, but I promise that all I need to do and all you need to do is show up and be honest. And it is a life beyond our wildest dreams, really. I mean, it's way beyond mine. And I had some wild dreams, but nowhere near what it is. And showing up and be honest, it's like, what did they say? It's really simple, not easy, definitely not easy, but really, really simple. And I think if there were many days where that's all I barely did. And yet, here I am. So my first sponsor, my first guide, her name was Margaret. I'll give you her advice. She had, I think, about 35 years, which seemed like 180 when I was new, and she was so wise. So I'm giving you her words of wisdom. But I would go to her all the time, and I would be like, Margaret, this is this. And I don't know if this is really true, but I think the only thing she ever said to me in all her 35 years of wisdom was take it easy, which made me furious, But now I look back and I think about, yeah, wasn't that true? It works.
Love it. Thank you so much, Judy. All right. That was a great RECO12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. Please consider joining our private Facebook group and WhatsApp group. The links to will be in the show notes and in the chat of this meeting, and participate in our community, asking questions and answering others' questions that may come up. If you have not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. It's a great way to work your 12th step in sharing this message with others. And I invite the audience to come back next week when we will be hearing from Cameron F., a RECO12 favorite, whose topic will be putting principle ahead of personalities. And he will be focusing on Tradition 12 and Steps 4 and 5 in his share. I really look forward to hearing how his experience, strength, and hope works in those ways. I hope to see you all back here next week. Now, let's launch off into the rest of our day with a really nice prayer that Judy will say for us. Judy, go ahead.
Oh, yes. I almost forgot we were doing that. Okay, let's have a moment of silence for all those who are suffering from addiction. And then I'd like you to just say to yourselves, repeat the sentence I say to yourselves. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Thanks, everybody.
Beautiful. Thank you, Judy. Come trudge this happy road with me, everybody. Work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of